All right, let's dive in. I forget what you might think about medieval philosophy. You know, dusty monasteries and old books. We're about to jump into a 1,000-year intellectual war, a really high-stakes battle for the very soul of Western thought.
So here's the central question. What happens when you take the rigorous, almost mathematical logic of thinkers like Plato and Aristotle, and you smash it headfirst into the revealed truth of a single, all-powerful creator god? This wasn't just some abstract puzzle. It was a full-blown, explosive identity crisis facing three of the world's major religions. I mean, think about it. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam all found themselves inheriting this massive intellectual legacy from the Greeks. And because of that, they all found themselves wrestling with the exact same profound challenges. How do you reconcile a timeless, eternal God with a creation that exists in time? And, the big one, what is the proper relationship between faith and reason? Okay, so for the first several centuries of this era, one name just completely dominated the conversation: Plato. But, and this is a really important twist, when early medieval thinkers said Plato, they weren't just reading his original work. They were engaging with Neoplatonism, a later, much more mystical interpretation of his ideas that pictured reality as this great spiritual hierarchy, kind of flowing down from a single divine source. And this right here, this gets to the absolute heart of the conflict. On one side, you have the Neoplatonic idea of emanation, where the universe just flows eternally from the divine, kind of like light pouring from the sun. On the other side, you have the core religious doctrine of creation ex nihilo, that's creation from nothing, where a personal God makes a conscious choice to create everything. Look, these aren't just slightly different ideas. They are fundamentally incompatible views of reality. And this Neoplatonic framework, with this whole hierarchy flowing down from the One, was incredibly influential across all three faiths. You see it in the Christian mystic Pseudo-Dionysius, the Irish scholar John Scotus Erigena, the great Muslim philosopher Avicenna, and the Jewish thinker Avizabran. They were all working within this same basic model. The absolute pinnacle of this Christian Platonist tradition, though, was St. Anselm. For him, philosophy wasn't some cold, neutral search for truth. Not at all. It was an act of worship. His motto was basically, I believe in order that I may understand. You see the order there? You start with faith, and then you use reason as a tool to explore its magnificent depths. So, this approach led Anselm to ask one of the most audacious questions in the history of philosophy. Could he prove God's existence without referencing scripture, without any evidence from the world, but using nothing more than pure abstract reason? And here's how he tried to do it with his famous ontological argument. It's a pure logic puzzle. So, step 1, conceive of the greatest possible being you can imagine. Got it? Okay, step 2. That idea now exists at the very least in your mind. Step 3, now ask yourself, what's greater? A being that exists only in your mind, or one that exists in reality too? Obviously, the one that exists in reality. So, if the being you first imagined was only an idea, you haven't actually imagined the greatest conceivable being, because a real one would be greater. Therefore, Anselm concluded, the greatest conceivable being must exist in reality. It's a real brain bender. But yeah, not everyone was convinced. A fellow monk named Gaunilo came back with this brilliant and really intuitive rebuttal. He said, look, I can conceive of a perfect island, the most beautiful, wonderful island imaginable. But just because I have that idea in my head doesn't mean it's floating out there in the ocean somewhere. He argued you can't just define something into existence. So just when it seemed like this Platonic framework was the only game in town, an intellectual bombshell was dropped on Western Europe. After being largely lost for centuries, the works of the other Greek giant, Aristotle, made a dramatic return. And this return only happened because of the incredible intellectual work of Muslim scholars, particularly in Spain. Thinkers like Averroes had meticulously preserved, studied, and written commentaries on Aristotle's texts, and it was through their work that Aristotle re-entered the Western conversation. And you can see right away why Aristotle was so disruptive. As interpreted by Averroes, his philosophy directly contradicted core religious doctrines. Aristotle seemed to argue that matter was eternal, meaning it wasn't created out of nothing. And even more shockingly, he suggested there was no personal individual immortality after death, that our souls just sort of merge back into a cosmic soul.
So, this set the stage for the ultimate intellectual showdown. The comfortable synthesis of Christian Platonism was over. Now, it was a direct clash between two powerful and seemingly contradictory worldviews.
This conflict basically created two main camps. On one side, you had the established tradition of Anselm, faith seeks understanding, where reason serves faith. On the other side, Averroes proposed something radical called the twofold truth doctrine, arguing that faith and reason are completely separate domains.
But let's be clear, this wasn't a partnership of equals. Averroes suggested that religion speaks in metaphors and allegories, which are suitable for the masses. Philosophy, on the other hand, speaks in precise, logical, literal truth. And when the two conflicted, well, it was the philosophical truth that seemed to hold the higher ground.
As you can imagine, this idea, which became known as Latin Averroism, caused an absolute uproar in the Christian world. Conservative thinkers like Bonaventure were horrified. Their response? They threw Aristotle out completely and just doubled down on the familiar, safer tradition of Plato and Augustine. They were forced to pick a side.
So, after all this intellectual warfare, where did that leave things? Was there any kind of resolution?
Well, here's the key takeaway. This entire era wasn't really about finding the final answer. Its most important, lasting contribution was defining the problem. It perfectly framed the questions and drew the intellectual battle lines that would dominate Western philosophy for the next several hundred years. And that leaves us with this massive question. With the worlds of Greek reason and monotheistic faith locked in what seemed like an irreconcilable war, was there any way forward? How could anyone possibly build a bridge and unite these two warring worlds? The stage was now set for the next great thinker to try.